This is Lightning Power Lunch with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli on Lightning Radio.
That was really huge for me to do that first goal, so that was really fun.
Yeah, I think just stopping on it. I was fortunate enough that maybe I was the only one who saw it, so that helps too. But again, just goes back to kind of what they worked on me with down in Syracuse, and obviously it paid off this time.
We knew obviously that can't happen. Giving up two like that, but I thought we did a good job regrouping. We came back in here, and lots of game left, 40 minutes left, and we just had to go out there and from that first puck drop of the second, just go out there and like I said, just get back to our game, get back to doing stuff that we know how to do well. And I thought for the most part we did that.
To be honest, probably the right team was winning after the first period, but we came in and coaches did a great job. A couple adjustments were made, and the guys knew what was at stake today. And I thought, really had an outstanding second period, and probably a good sign for, a team to, give up two in the last minute, which is a no-no, and but make sure, you came in, or you come out in the second and play the way we did, and that was probably the difference in the game.
It was the difference in the game. Lightning erupted for 4 in the second. That was good to see. First period wasn't as great as couple of goals towards the end of the first period, as Coop said. And the Lightning, before the game, had some injury news they had to deal with.
Yeah, we got a lot to get to.
We do. Geekie, you heard him in the soundbite. You saw him there. If you're watching us, he scored a goal, and Bjorkstrand's out week to week here. We'll see how it transpires with a lower body injury. Lots of questions we want to get to at Bolts Radio, but partner, I'm going to bring you in. A couple of games left in the regular season, but I felt like this was a game you wanted to see the Lightning come away with 2 points. Buffalo have been playing well, but if you feel like you can still get first place, this was a game you needed to win, and they did. Wasn't pretty, but it was a good game.
It was a good final 40 minutes for sure for the Lightning. You know what? Let's get to the game in a bit. I think there are other topics, if that's okay. To look at first. So let's give the fans, in case they don't know yet or haven't heard or just not paying attention, it's like head in the sand until power lunch, where things stand with the Lightning, the Maple Leafs, and the Panthers. So the win last night for the Lightning was a significant step for Tampa Bay to securing home ice in the first round because they won the game in regulation. That means that the Florida Panthers cannot tie the Lightning in regulation wins. Had they been able to tie in regulation wins, it would have gone to the next tiebreaker. Regulation overtime wins, they were close than that. Then would have gone to the third tiebreaker, just wins, and the Panthers actually would have won that tiebreak. So right now, the Lightning, it is locked in. If the teams tie in points, the Lightning win the tiebreaker. So that's why last night's game was significant, that they got the regulation win.
Right.
They're 2 points up on Florida. Both teams have 2 games left. The Panthers play tonight at home against the Rangers. If the Panthers lose in regulation tonight to the Rangers, the Lightning will have locked in second place at least, meaning that the game on Tuesday will have no bearing on who finishes second and who finishes third. Correct. Now, you might say, there's no way the Panthers are losing to the Rangers at home. The Rangers just got eliminated. You never know. You never know. Should the Panthers get points out of that game, then what the Lightning would need to do is win the game on Tuesday. If they don't win the game on Tuesday, they would still have an opportunity with a win against the Rangers on Thursday to get second. So basically, the Lightning need 2 points somehow, some way. If the Panthers lose tonight in regulation, those are the 2 points that they need. So that's why I said they took a significant step forward. The Maple Leafs had an impressive back-to-back sweep. They beat Montreal in overtime at home 1-0 on Saturday, and they had to fly to Raleigh for, I think it was a 5 o'clock game. Their game started an hour before ours did, which our game, Lightning Sabres, started at 6. And I was watching some of the first period. It was 0-0. The Hurricanes started shooting the Maple Leafs 11-1. Which you would kind of expect. That was a tough back-to-back for Toronto. Toronto popped in a goal late first, and they ended up winning going away. That was a very impressive win for the Maple Leafs, who have a stranglehold now on the division title. But they haven't clinched yet. So they have a 4-point lead on the Lightning. Both teams have 2 games left. If the Lightning make up those 4 points, and the only way they can do it is winning both of their games and having the Maple Leafs lose in regulation, and the Lightning win at least one of their games in regulation, the Lightning would win the tiebreaker. So the Maple Leafs and Lightning are tied in regulation wins. So obviously, if the Leafs even get a point, they're going to get first. But if the Lightning make up those 4 points and they do it with at least one regulation win, the Lightning would get first. The odds of that happening, I think, are very slim, but there is still a mathematical possibility. Otherwise, we're going to see Lightning Panthers in the first round. As I said, one of those two teams obviously will have home ice, depending on who finishes in second. Right now, it looks like it's the Lightning. So that's, I want to get to the injuries next, but that's where things stand as far as the race and kind of what's at stake. And, we can think about like, how important is it for the Lightning? Like, let's say the Panthers lose tonight in regulation. Do the Lightning start massaging the minutes? There's only so much they can do as far as roster decisions, but, does that for sure mean that Vasi's not going to New York on Thursday, which we've kicked around? So I think the game tonight, Panthers-Rangers, has some significance, not just for the Lightning potentially to secure second place, but also maybe what they're going to do with the lineup in the last 2 games. We've seen some teams rest guys. Colorado notably didn't play McKinnon in the last 2 games, which opened the door for Cooch to win the Art Ross, which he's going to win because he's 3 points up on McKinnon.
Yeah,
McKinnon's regular
nobody's catching him
season is
there.
over. Yeah.
Right. So that makes a lot of sense. And, you and I had discussed on this show about first place, the meaning of it heading into the playoffs. And that looks less and less as if it's going to be a possibility.
Are very, very slim.
But home ice in the first round is still very relevant. And I think we've heard the players talk about, that to a degree. So I think that is still on the table. And I think you want to see, of course, the Lightning finish the regular season on a high note. But if they don't, I think you still want them to secure home ice in the first round. I think the second part of this equation is, what is the lineup going to look like with Bjorkstrand being out? And we saw Conor Geekie, partner, get recalled in time for the game last night. I thought he acquitted himself pretty well, scored a goal.
Yep.
He looked like there was some chemistry
7
there.
shots or something like that.
Yeah.
What did he finish with?
I mean, he was around the puck. He was
7 attempts. I'm sorry. He had 4 on net, 3 missed.
He was engaged, playing with Gonçalves specifically, was very cool. So I think there's that dynamic where, look, let's maybe mention the Bjorkstrand first and foremost.
Yeah.
That's a loss. I mean,
that's a big loss.
He's a good player who provides you some scoring. I mean, he just does. If you felt like depth scoring was a potential weakness for the Lightning and that they addressed it at the deadline by getting Gordon Bjorkstrand, well, to have him out potentially during the playoffs is a big loss. It is a big loss.
Week to week is vague.
Yeah.
I mean, is it going to be like Moser week to week, or is it 8 to 10 weeks, or is it more like 2 weeks, right? Not day to day, though, means to me for sure he's missing the beginning of the playoffs, if not the entire first round.
Right.
I mean, we're gonna get more information as the days pass, right? Like, is he even out at practice?
Right.
When is he going to show up with the red no contact jersey? I mean, it's a lower body injury too, which is unfortunate because that really prohibits you from doing much of anything on the ice until you're well enough to skate, as opposed to an upper body injury where, assuming we're not talking about a concussion, right? Like if it's a broken finger or a wrist or something like that, you can skate. So it's a horrible timing. And it wasn't me. I don't believe that I have this sort of power, but remember last week I was talking about, through the years, the Lightning have lost players in the week leading into the playoffs, and those losses have been significant. And in 3 games on this homestand, the Lightning have lost 3 players, right? So they lost Glendening.
Yeah.
Then they lost Bjorkstrand, and then Radish got hurt last night. So we don't have an update on Radish, but hopefully that one is not as serious. The Glendening one, though, they said out indefinitely, which is not a good sign either.
No, I mean,
so what do these injuries mean? So just speaking plainly, to me, I hope Darren Radish is fine. Like, I hope he's able to play tomorrow. Right. But if Darren Radish is pulled out of the lineup for any length of time, Thank you, Steve. Radish didn't practice today. I wouldn't read too much into that until we actually hear something from the team, though. If he's a little nicked up, but potentially could play, the Lightning might hold him out until the start of the playoffs. So time will tell. Of the three players, Radish, the loss of Radish, I think, can be absorbed most easily, and that's probably the wrong word for the Lightning. First of all, because they have been dressing 7 defensemen, so you could go to 6. Now you're stressing your forwards a little bit, and we'll get to that. But traditionally, 12 and 6 is what a lineup looks like. And if you're pulling Radish out, you still have 6 other defensemen. He is a righty. We've talked about Max Crozier. Max Crozier has shown that he is capable of filling in. He wouldn't be doing exactly what Radish does on power play 2, playing a lot with Victor Hedman, etc. I think there are options there for the Lightning. The forwards are a little tougher to replace. Glendening is a big loss in terms of faceoffs in the defensive zone to the right of the goalie. He just is. I mean, the Lightning lost a draw to Toronto after Glendening got hurt and wasn't able to take that draw, where Tavares won it cleanly from Yanni Gourde on the power play. Toronto was on the power play, won the draw, and the Leafs scored seconds later. Now, not every faceoff loss is going to lead to a goal against, but Glendening's value to the Lightning is most acutely felt in a good way in terms of what he can do in the faceoff circle in the defensive zone to the right of the goalie. Most players, maybe the majority of players, do shoot left. I mean, I don't know what the breakdown is, but if you look at most teams have more lefties than righties. By that logic, most teams, their number one center is probably going to be a lefty. Meaning that usually that guy, if they pick the circle, that guy is going to choose the circle where you would want a Glendening. Right now, the Lightning only have, without Glendening, one right-handed centerman, Braden Point. And he's under 50% this year on faceoffs. It's not like the Lightning threw him out there since Glendening got hurt to take penalty kill faceoffs, which we saw with Stamkos. Remember a few years ago, Stamkos was a righty, and often on penalty kill, they actually have him out there to take the faceoff. If he wanted, he'd get off the ice. And the Lightning would get their penalty kill unit out there. But winning the faceoff when you're down a man or it's a key draw in the defensive zone, those are big, big faceoffs, and that is a significant part of playoff hockey. So the Lightning are going to have to figure out a way, if Glendening is not able to return for the start of the playoffs, to navigate around that. Out indefinitely, though, to me, sounds like he's not going to be ready, at least for the start of the playoffs. Then you have the Bjorkstrand injury, and that is a tough injury because I've really liked how he's fit in with the Lightning, and it looks like, in recent weeks, he was getting more and more comfortable. He was starting to score. They had him in the bumper on that first power play unit. He scored a beautiful goal against Toronto. Smart player, good two-way player, slotted in really nicely in the third line. And you're right, Greg, when you said that the Lightning acquired forwards at the deadline because I think they wanted to address their depth at that position. Well, they acquired 2 forwards at the deadline, Gourde and Bjorkstrand. But now they've sustained injuries to 2 forwards, Glendening and Bjorkstrand. So as a result, dressing 11 last night, the Lightning dressed 11 with Conor Geekie up from Syracuse. Now, Conor did well, but what happens if there's another injury? What happens if Radish is unable to play and the Lightning decide to go with 12 and 6? Who's the 12th forward? They had to send out Cam Atkinson for cap reasons, but I'm talking about in the playoffs. Like, who's going to be the next forward? Is it Connor Sherry, who's had a good season in Syracuse, but really hasn't played much this year in the NHL for the Lightning?
Dave, what about Isaac Howard? That's coming.
Yeah, that is probably coming. But I think that beyond that, all right, let's say that somehow the Lightning decide to sign Isaac Howard. Here's a guy who's had zero games of NHL experience. I mean, are you going to rely on this player to pull on the rope when he doesn't even know your system, right? So the Cale Makars and the Chris Kreiders of the world, like, they are the exception. Now, I know that Booyam, is that how you say his name? The guy who went to Minnesota. He has a very interesting name. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Yeah. Look, it sounds like he's going to slot right in. Right. Minnesota did that with Brock Faber a couple of years ago. Matthew Nyes. But Matthew Nyes and Brock Faber got in some regular season games before the end of the regular season and played in the playoffs. Anyway, it's not really the Lightning's way to do that. And it sounds like maybe that ship has sailed. With or without Isaac Howard, though, we are returning to the same problem, if that's the right way of putting it, which is the Lightning wanted to address an area of need. They did it, but now you're like basically erasing that because the two guys that they acquired at the deadline, that's a +2, but now you got a -2 because 2 forwards are out. And it's not just that Oliver Bjorkstrand was giving the Lightning really good minutes and becoming a very important part of their team.
Right.
You're pulling him out, but also now you're almost having to go to Syracuse. I mean, they have gone to Syracuse.
Yeah, you have to.
If we're going to say Atkinson's going to be the 12th forward, or if there's another injury, Atkinson's the 11th forward, you had to go to Syracuse to call up Conor Geekie. Not saying he didn't earn it, but, had the Lightning stayed healthy, would Geekie have come up?
No.
Probably not. Yeah.
No.
At least not at the end of the regular season.
Right.
So,
well, this is where the 11
that's why it's a very
this
this is horrible timing for the Lightning. Horrible.
It is.
But you got to navigate through it. I mean, let's not forget they lost Braden Point in Game 7 of the first round in 2022 to Toronto, and they basically played the whole playoff without him. He was ineffective in the first 2 games of the Stanley Cup final, even though he gave it a go. So you got to pick up the slack until hopefully, you can stay alive until these guys come back.
I say this a lot in anything. Everybody's replaceable, but some people are harder to replace than others. Glendening has a unique skill set.
Yeah.
And the Lightning have been, I think, up and down this year in the faceoff circle. The Bjorkstrand one, though, I think is going to test you. Now, are the Lightning better equipped today to handle a player like Bjorkstrand being out than they were earlier in the year? So in other words, Gonçalves seems like he's a different player now than he was earlier in the year.
I agree with that.
So is that cause for optimism that he can maybe pick it up a little bit more, even more so in the playoffs with him being out? I think, listen, once you start talking about 2-3 regulars being out of the lineup, I don't care who you are, it's going to test your depth. We would be having these same questions if Washington had a few guys banged up, or Toronto. So I think once you get into the spot, you just hope, I think you have some NHL veteran players down in Syracuse that you could probably recall and feel like, okay, for a couple of games, maybe even a series, I can get by. That's how I would look at it. And hoping
you're going to have to do that.
You are. I mean, look, you brought in Connor Sherry for a reason. If he,
I just put his name out there because
if he's a guy,
I mean, if you had to go to Syracuse and bring somebody up at the forward position, who are you bringing up?
So, our
some
fan base,
like Jack Finley, because he's a right-handed centerman. I think he's hurt again right now. And I mean, the difference between Finley and Sherry, who's not a center, look at the games of experience, right?
And look, I think our fan base would probably say, get the younger guys in the system and reward them and have them come up and get that experience. Okay. I think when we're talking about your 14th, 15th, 16th forward in the organization, you just, I don't know how much difference there is. And if you do think there's a difference, what is it? Is it NHL experience over talent in the long run? So is Duke somebody you'd bring up rather than
I didn't even mention
a
him,
Connor Sherry, just because you want to get him experience. We've seen this with Cole Koepke, right? Not he didn't play in a game, but remember they bring him up and he skates around in a series against Colorado. So maybe there was some thinking there that, okay, reward a younger prospect potentially as a guy who could be knocking on the door to play in some of these postseason games. Maybe that expedites his development as a player the following year. My sense is it stinks. You got to hope your team's better today than it was 3 months ago to handle a loss like that. And I think it is.
If they end up playing the Panthers, and right now the odds are that they are going to play the Panthers. The Panthers are dealing with some of the same issues, right? I mean, Matthew Tkachuk has been out since the Four Nations. If it's a groin injury, he hasn't really been able to to be on the ice while he recovers because you don't want to aggravate the injury. Somebody told me it might have actually been Braden Coburn did the game with me last night. He said he's not even skating yet. I don't know. I can't remember if Kobe said that to me, and I don't know if it's true or not. But Bennett's been out. He's not going to play the rest of the regular season, so he's dealing with something. And then there's the Ekblad situation where Ekblad, when he comes back in, he will come back in for game 3, but he will have missed 20 games. So if it's Lightning Panthers, both teams are going to be kind of dealing with, integrating guys back in the case of the Panthers, or maybe dealing with absences in the case of the Lightning. It'll certainly be a storyline in that series.
It's going to have to be.
Yeah.
I mean, let's put it this way. The Panthers are dealing with more than the Lightning are, injury-wise. I mean, they have questions. I mean, you just mentioned Chuck. I mean, that is a huge question mark. Lightning have question marks, but I think, they're kind of navigating the waters here. And I think also, too, partner, does bring into play the 11-7, 12-6.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel like you don't have as much depth at your forward position, and I know it can be taxing,
right?
Are you comfortable? And again, assuming Radish is healthy, and we kind of get into this conversation, if your back end is healthy and you feel like, you know what, my options down in Syracuse, I like, but let's see what happens these first couple of games of this first round by going 11-7. And let's see if we can play Cooch and Point and Guentzel a little bit more. And let's see how impactful it is. And if we need a jolt, maybe they bring somebody up.
And I think that these injuries hopefully will force the Lightning to get even more zeroed in and dialed in on defending.
Yes.
And it's not that they're losing a lot of offense. I mean, Luke Glendening didn't really provide a lot of offense for them this year. And Bjorkstrand, look, he was on power play 1, but he was, on the third line. But it's more about we're a little weaker in terms of our depth. So let's just make sure that everybody is just digging in defensively. And this is maybe a good segue to last night's game, because the Lightning were taking on a team we've seen they can score. They're playing loose. Buffalo, they've had a really good, probably 5 weeks. I know they were 8-2-1 in their previous 11 before last night's game, scoring a ton. I mean, Tage Thompson certainly could have added to his goal total last night, but he's going to have to hustle now. He's 6 goals away from 50. He's 3 goals away from matching his career high. They only have 2 games left, but could Tage Thompson have a hat trick in a game? Yeah. I mean, he could match his previous high. So he's done a lot of damage offensively in this stretch of 5 to 6 weeks. But for the Lightning, so we didn't even talk about the Detroit game. I thought they were less impressive in the Detroit game than they were in the Toronto game. The Toronto game, they had a bad start, but then they really pressed, right? And they carried play for much of that Toronto game. And they were dealing with some extraordinarily gifted players on the other side that made plays. And that's going to happen when you're talking about Matthews and Marner and Nyes. But the Detroit game, Detroit was really not interested in playing that game until Lucas Raymond got hit in the face. Chernak's shoulder pad caught him. And that got their blood boiling, and they got engaged. And frankly, after that, they outplayed the Lightning. And the Lightning were fortunate, honestly, to get a point out of that game. So it was not a great game all around. It was not a great defensive game for the Lightning. They blew a lead that they gained in the third period with a sloppy play in the neutral zone. And Jake Guentzel, who's one of their best two-way forwards. And you're up 3-2, whatever it was, 8 minutes left. You get the puck in the neutral zone. He had a lane to dump it in. And he tried a cross-ice pass to Kucherov, and Sider, who had a great game. I mean, Mo Sider was one of the best Detroit players on the ice, knocked the puck out of the air with his stick, and they reversed it quickly. And Hedman got caught up in the play, turned into a 2-on-1. The Wings executed that really well. You'd see after Kasper scored, Hedman slammed his stick against the glass because he was so annoyed that had happened. But they should know better. You're up 3-2. It's okay to win the game 3-2.
Yeah.
Get that puck in, make them go 200 feet. Again, you're reading the play. Hockey is a game of mistakes, but that was a mistake. It was a mistake by Guentzel to go cross ice. And in retrospect, it was a mistake by Hedman to jump up in the play a little bit. Just you can be conservative about it, right? So that was kind of the overripe cherry on top, the cherry that should have gone in the garbage, right? Like that was just not well done at all by the Lightning. And then they got two guys stuck out there during overtime who ran out of gas. Detroit deserved to win the game, honestly. So how are the Lightning going to come back against Buffalo after having defensive problems at points against Toronto and really just not playing a solid game defensively or offensively against Detroit? They had a very poor first period defensively. And it was like the triple whammy at the end of the first period. The first whammy is give up a goal in the final minute. The second whammy is give up another goal in the final minute. And then the third whammy is give up a goal on the shift after you already gave up a goal. So that was some kind of turn of events there where the Sabres scored twice in 15 seconds in the last 30 seconds of the period. So they went up 2-1 after one. But as Coop said, the Lightning weren't good that whole period. I mean, the Sabres hit 2 posts, as did the Lightning, but we're talking about what the Lightning doing defensively. We know the Sabres struggled defensively. The Lightning had some looks, but the Sabres were better than the Lightning in the first period, and the Lightning didn't handle that very well. So Quinn hits the crossbar, and Tuck hits the post. In addition, the most dangerous player on Buffalo in terms of shooting the puck, Tage Thompson, not once, but twice, gets wide open in the middle of the ice. He scored from that spot in the previous meeting in Buffalo. He is a finisher, and you put him in the middle of the ice of the hash marks with an open look, he is going to score on a lot of his shot attempts. And Jonas Johansson made 2 of his best saves of the game. The Lightning were not good managing the puck. They were loose in their coverage. So sometimes when you turn the puck over, you're out of position. So that's part of the problem. Part of the problem was, though, that they were just loose in their coverage and they were letting guys open in front. I mean, on the goal that was scored by Connor Clifton, I mean, they had 2 guys open at the side of the net. There's not a Lightning player near them. So that was just a comedy of errors on that goal and just not a good first period at all. And you know what the Lightning did? They regrouped during the first intermission and they played not perfect defensive hockey, but much, much, much better defensive hockey in the final 40 minutes. And some of that was they got their game going, so they had the puck a lot more. But having the puck isn't just about when you get the puck, you keep the puck. Having the puck also is when the other team has the puck, you're taking it away. You're ending plays early. And how many open looks did the Sabres have in front of Jonas Johansson in the final 2 periods? Very few. What did the Sabres score on? They scored on a 5-on-3, which is, that's going to happen. And they scored on kind of a set play that was well executed late in the game when it was basically over. I think if you look at the number of scoring chances the Sabres had in the final 40 minutes, the number I bet would be less than what they generated in the first period alone. So at the other end of the ice, the Lightning were still generating chances themselves, and they had a bunch more posts, and they exploded for 4 goals in the second, 2 more in the third, and they were able to win going away. But what the takeaway from that game for me was, against a team that can make you uncomfortable defensively, Buffalo can, the Lightning raise their level. And that's what we want to see in these final 2 regular season games. No matter who's in the lineup, no matter what they do offensively, D up. You can defend, protect the house, protect the front of the net, limit turnovers, play the way that you are going to need to be playing in the playoffs. Yeah. And that was kind of what Coop said after the Detroit game. I don't know if we still have that clip, but I heard him say it, which is like, we're getting points basically because they've gotten points in the overtime losses to Toronto and Detroit. But Coop said, we're getting points, but our process is not where it needs to be. And he's like, if we have even a prayer, basically, he said, a prayer of going anywhere in the playoffs, we're going to have to sort this out. So the final 40 minutes looked pretty good last night. And for the fans who were like, whoa, it was Buffalo, blah, blah, blah. Like, look, what Buffalo can do well will test you defensively.
It will.
So I actually think it was a pretty good exhibition by the Lightning. Pretty good display over the final 40.
There's also this underlying belief that we have that when the games are meaningful, the Lightning will be better defensively because the games are meaningful. I mean, you tend to play better when you have a lot at stake. And let's face it, John Cooper also mentioned this. These last few games have had more of a preseason feel to it.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, he
Lightning.
said we're treating these games. We look like we're playing in the preseason. What he said.
Yeah, and
he wasn't saying the other team was treating it like a preseason.
That's
100%
true. But I do think that's kind of the reality of sports in many ways. I mean, this isn't like the Lightning knew in January that they were going to be in the playoffs and nobody was going to catch them like we've seen before. But I think we all felt pretty confident that the Lightning were going to be a top 3 team in the Atlantic Division. It's just a matter of where were they going to seed. I think when you see some of these breakdowns, for some people, you have these visions of yesteryear where maybe the Lightning are having a lot of problems defensively and it's going to leak into the playoffs. I think we look at it and say, I don't think that's going to happen. They do have to show us, but this has been a team over the last 80 games that has been, for the most part, a top 5, top 10 team defensively. I don't think that goes away, partner, if you have a couple of bad patches. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that, not us specifically, but I think in general, we are prisoners of the moment.
But I think you can have a little bit of a team slump.
Slumps are fine.
Playoffs, there's no time
for sure
to let bad habits. It's really bad habits creep into your game.
That's what it is.
You correct it. And so it was encouraging what Coop said after the game last time. It was like, I was really happy that we corrected it because, they took a gut punch there at the end of the first. Those 2 late goals. I mean, the second period could have unfolded a little differently than how it did. So, and they've met that challenge throughout the year. When they've had a little bit of a wobbly period, maybe it's a game, maybe it's 2 games, a handful of games, maybe they're getting points, but they're not quite where they need to be really defensively is what I'm talking about. They usually self-correct. That's how you get to be I think they're tied they've dropped a little bit because they've given up 4 goals in each of the 3 games defensively, but I think they're tied for 5th. You don't get to be a top 5 defensive team in the NHL if you're going through long stretches of poor defensive play.
No. And if you have that poor play towards the end of the year, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to filter into the playoffs either.
You hope
not, I think you and I,
anyway.
I mean, you and I have talked about just how drastically different the regular season and the postseason are. So time will tell. We will find out. My sense is things will align for Tampa Bay from the effort and the defensive perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The other stuff, we're just going to have to find out personnel-wise what that's going to look like. I thought Johansson was good.
Yeah.
In that game against Buffalo. I mean, he faced
I mentioned the saves he was asked to make in the first period.
Incredible. How about the one Tage Thompson coming right down the middle?
That's what I was talking about. Yeah, he had 2 of those. One, he was standing still and they got him the puck.
Yeah.
The other, it was off the rush. He walked in. And the Lightning didn't handle that very well. I mean, the most dangerous area of the ice is right in front of the net. Like from the net, almost like a baseball diamond out to the dots. That area. That's where you don't want to give open looks, right? Mm-hmm. And the Lightning were very loose in the first period.
And you mentioned that was
specifically in that area.
Right. And Buffalo can make you uncomfortable. We know that.
Yeah.
But I also thought Reimer wasn't seeing the puck very well.
No. So he had that 7-game winning streak, and then the Sabres lost to Columbus 3-2 when Reimer was in net. Reimer was not in net when they lost to the Panthers in a shootout the night before they played the Lightning. But Reimer had been on a good run. But, he wasn't able to help his team quite as much last night, although he made a remarkable save on Nick Paul in the second period.
Incredible.
Where it looked like that was going to be a sure goal. And he got his skate on the puck and kept it from crossing the line.
One thing I do want to note, because Braden Coburn did the game last night with you, and he'll be doing some of the games in the postseason.
Yeah, he's doing the road games in
which
the
playoffs. Which would be cool.
Yeah.
And Phil will be back, obviously, on Tuesday. He mentioned to us, I think it was off the air, but he's a big fan of the 12-6.
Yeah, which is funny because he did a lot of the 11-7 when he played for the Lightning.
He's like,
including the bubble.
Yeah. He's like, look, I like to know my partner. I want to know what my partner's doing. I want to get in sync with him. And he feels like that is the downside of having a spare defenseman. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And
hard to argue with the results, though.
It is.
The Lightning have had using the 7 defensemen. So I think it was actually Radish who had a play where it was in the second period and he had a turnover. That might have been the one chance the Sabres had that I remember that was fairly dangerous in the second period.
Yeah.
And Radish was on his offside. He was on the left side of the ice, just the way the play unfolded. And he tried to backhand it through the middle, and the Sabres intercepted it. And I think that was when Kobe said, Radish is, he's having different partners, and, maybe that affected him. I think it affected him more. Just, it was just not a good play. And also he was on a side of the ice that he's not normally on. Radish is such a good skater that I feel a lot of times he doesn't even need sometimes you have to pass it if there's no path to get out of the defense's zone, but we've seen him skated out of trouble before.
Yeah.
He's very good at that.
Yeah. Congrats to Lilleberg as well.
Yes.
Right.
I was actually looking it up. I think I still have it up. Yeah. So Emil Lilleberg has had 45 shots this year. 45. Because I remember when he scored, I'm like, he has definitely had some looks. Those are 45 shots on net.
Yeah, right.
Not including the ones that, are blocked or missed the net or whatever. So it probably, if he had some luck, honestly, it would have happened earlier. Yeah. But good for him.
It always does.
Guentzel hits 40.
Yeah. Guentzel hits 40.
Third time in his career.
Cooch is going to win the scoring race.
Yes.
Right. And, I had some people ask us on the show at the arena, what do you think they're going to do with Vasi these next 2 games? And I think you and I are aligned. They're going to be playing him tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll kind of see what it means, right, for Thursday.
Yeah.
I
think if the Lightning do know that they're locked in, especially if they're just coming right back home, I think it would be unlikely that they would go from New York to Fort Lauderdale. There's no way they're going to go to Toronto. They can't play Toronto in the first round where Toronto has home ice. So they're either coming back to Tampa or they're coming back to Florida and going to Fort Lauderdale. I think it's unlikely that they would do that. So if that's the case, if the game has no significance, just leave Vasi at home. If you can make it work through the cap. I'm not quite sure what the cap situation is, though. If they can have a third goalie come up, even though it would be basically the final day of the regular season. We'll see. It'll play out the way it plays out.
Yeah.
If Vasi has to make the trip and backs up Johansson, then so be it. Hopefully they don't get home at 4 a.m. like we did after the last time, the Lightning played the Rangers, and we got stuck on the tarmac for a couple hours.
Unbelievable. That's the worst, isn't it?
Yeah.
Jeez. Brutal. I want to get to this question. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me just because we talked about what's happening with the Lightning in the playoffs. I think it was about a week ago. I'm like, these races are over. I'm like, look, good on Columbus and good on Calgary. They have strung together a little bit of winning streaks here for both teams. Each team has had a winning streak. And the teams in the wild card stumbling a little, like Montreal stumbling a little bit, right? Montreal had that long winning streak. They lost to Ottawa. They lost in overtime to Toronto, and Columbus is starting to gain ground. It's still going to be a tough road for both Columbus and Calgary, but Columbus is 3 points back with 2 games left. Montreal also has 2 games left. Depending on how these last 2 games go, if Montreal only gets 1 point and Columbus makes up the 4, they would end up tied. It is possible Columbus could win the tiebreaker. They may not win the tiebreaker, though, too. Columbus really needs to win the last couple of games in regulation or have Montreal lose out and not get any points. But certainly that race favors Montreal. In the West, neither Minnesota nor St. Louis has clinched yet because Calgary can still pick up 4 points. They're 2 points behind the Blues and 3 points behind Minnesota. And both Minnesota and St. Louis only have 1 game left. So that one is still, that one is probably a little more wide open. I would say the odds of Calgary catching one of those teams is a little bit higher than Columbus. But, those teams that miss are going to miss by, a point or 2, and they're going to look back, as is always the case. And you're like, we'd only won that game in overtime. If we'd only won that game in the shootout, or if we'd only not given up the goal with 3 minutes left in a tied game, we didn't get the game to overtime. Like, you always go back and look at those those games that might have tipped the balance a little bit and given you a couple more points. But I'm sure the league is happy that we still have compelling races here, as we're down to the last couple of days of the regular season.
And for those who aren't in it, it feels like a drawn out process, but you're going to have that, for a few teams that are eliminated. Andrew Partner from Facebook says, any chance they give Gabriel Dumont the spot that Luke had? I know it's been a long time, but he was a good face-off guy the last recall when he played up here.
That's a good comment, Andrew, because Dumont is a righty and takes face-offs. He hasn't been in the NHL for a number of years. He's also had a lot of injury problems.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure where his game is at.
Where is he?
He's in Syracuse.
Is he retired? Oh, he's in. Okay.
Yeah, he's in Syracuse.
When's the last time he
I'm
played?
going to look up
in
his
NHL?
stats. Well, I'll look up his stats and tell you. Yeah. We'll go to another question. Why look up?
I was going to say, Dumont, I feel like has been with the organization in some form or fashion since 2017?
Oh, I think even before. I remember Steve Yzerman was irked because the Ottawa Senators grabbed him on waivers.
I do remember that vaguely.
And then he grabbed him back. His last year in the NHL was 2019-2020, but he only played 3 games with Minnesota.
How old
then
is
there
he?
was
Is
that
he
year he was with
30?
the Lightning.
Yeah.
Then he was with the year with the Lightning and Ottawa. That was that whole waiver situation.
Yeah.
17-18. The most games he played with the Lightning was 16-17, which was their injury-plagued year. They missed the playoffs by a point. They had a lot of injuries, especially at center. And Dumont played 39 games. He has played 14 games with Syracuse this year. And last year, he only played 47. So, he's just been injured a lot recently. Right. Yeah, he's 34.
Can he take a face-off? That's what
I think he can take a face-off, but
would.
I think that the odds, Andrew, are very slim.
Good question, Andrew.
The guy.
Thaw345 on YouTube. Wish JBB had done more to address the defensive depth at the deadline. That bottom pair doesn't give me much confidence.
I do not agree, Thaw345, although I love your handle.
That's great.
I think the Lightning have been happy with their 7D.
Hey, guys, listen, in the playoffs, too, your top 4 defensemen are going to be playing a decent amount.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Probably even more so than in the regular season.
Well, it's what you need in a game.
You need in a game. But you need a lot more in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, Victor Hedman's going to be playing a lot.
I actually feel, and I think he's had a good year, but I have noticed that Nick Pervix has elevated his game in the last several games.
He has.
I mean, Phil mentioned it. Brian Engvall. I was talking with Brian before the game. Everyone was out watching the Masters, right?
Yeah, right.
And Brian was out there. We were chatting a little bit about the team, and I forget how it came up. Oh, because he said he had a conversation with Lilleberg in the morning, because Brian went to the morning skate and had a conversation with Lilleberg. He didn't know he was going to end up scoring his first NHL goal. And Lilleberg was talking about the high sticking penalty he took against Toronto. He's like, I didn't mean to get trying to lift the guy's stick. It's like he was beating himself up over it, according to Brian. But then we were talking a little bit about Pervix. I'm like, Pervix has played really well these last few games in particular. Like, he's been solid, but even more impressive these last few games. And Brian's like, I agree completely. Like, he's noticed the same thing. And Brian has the benefit of watching games from up top and down low, which is a different experience, but I think he's done both, and Pervix has impressed him from both of the locations that Brian has been at, right? Up top where you can see everything, and down low where, you kind of get the feel and the intensity and like how players are handling and navigating through that.
It is a interesting question, one that we've talked about when it comes to 12-6, 11-7. We like the depth I think the Lightning have on the back end. You can make a case one of their better defensemen isn't even in the lineup in Crozier. I mean, when we start talking about him and having a place at the table, but I think the Lightning's depth is okay. I have no problem on the back end there. Again, I think this is more about, if you feel that way, is playing to the Lightning's strengths, playing with the puck, and being better in their own zone, and having the forwards come back and help. Because I think it isn't just the back end, and if they struggle getting the puck out, it's on them. I mean, that's part of it. But I think, to your point, which you brought up, and I think it was the most valuable point here, is that I think you want to see them tighten things up, grab their
Yeah.
attention, and really start to play that way defensively, because that's how you're going to have to win games in the playoffs. It's just a different animal.
And it's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
There are going to be moments in playoff games. I mean, I'm just going to use the Panthers as an example. In a series against the Panthers, Barkov and his line mates, and I confess, I'm not sure who his line mates are going to be. Like, what's going to happen with Kachuk? Verhaeghe's been in and out of the lineup a little bit. Like, what are they going to do with that? But the Barkov line is the main line for Florida. There are going to be points in that series when Barkov's line is out against Perbix and Lilleberg. It's going to happen. It's going to be after an icing. It's going to be when the Panthers have last change. They're going to have to meet the challenge. They're going to have to dig in. They're going to have to defend. They can do it. They've not seen the Barkov line previously. Like, they've been out against the Barkov line before.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of winning playoff games too. You know, you have to navigate through sometimes tougher matchups and not let what would be perceived as a matchup disadvantage hurt you.
It's fair. This one from Twitter, I should say X. Thomas sent a picture of he and his wife with Kucherov. He says Kucherov's second goal was filthy. My wife loved it and got his sweater to boot.
Yeah, it was the jerseys off our backs.
Yeah.
That was probably the jersey to have, because that was the Art Ross clinching jersey for this year.
Beautiful.
Brian also said to me he felt Kucherov, first of all, Brian said, and he was right about this, winning the Art Ross meant a lot to Kucherov. You could see when he scored the goal, he knew he had the trophy. His reaction, because usually Kucherov is like, I scored a goal. It's like another Sunday afternoon stroll at the park, right? Like, he's sometimes pretty nonchalant when he scores. He was the opposite of nonchalant when he scored that goal. And Brian said, I think that once he gets that, he just said a point because that's all he needed. It came on a goal. He's like, once he gets that point, I think he's going to, like, he's not going to feel the pressure of having to get the point. He probably should have had in the first period. Braden Point, in rare fashion, missed a wide open net and hit the post. Kucherov would have had an assist on that. It doesn't happen very often. But
if his reaction,
now that drama is over, and he added 2 more points before the game ended. One where he read the cross ice pass, stole it. It's kind of like that Radish play in a way I was talking about, where Ryan McLeod tries to go cross ice from the boards.
Terrible.
Kucherov reads it, steals it, snaps it in. And how about the Guentzel power play goal?
Yeah.
I mean, it was the 7th goal. So, a great play from Kucherov. So when we talk about, like, what do the Lightning need to do to win a playoff series with a full lineup, in other words, a non-injury depleted lineup, or a lineup where they may be without a couple of their important players, well, the top guys are going to need to really elevate.
Yeah.
As well as
I would agree with
defensively. And so
I would agree with that.
The Kucherov that we saw in the second half of the game, especially once he got that goal, that's the guy the Lightning.
That's an extra factor.
Yeah, in a series. And you know the Panthers, and I keep saying the Panthers, it could be Ottawa, but whether it's the Panthers or Ottawa, whoever the opponent is, they're going to be keying on Kucherov. They are going to be looking to take away his time and space and try and punish him best they can.
Yep.
He's going to have to play above that and elevate, so that if they try and close on him, he escapes. That's what he can do, right? And if you can escape, now the other team is out of position.
It's a good point. And by the way, if you don't think players monitor their individual statistics, or that doesn't mean something, it does.
Yeah.
And I'm not faulting them for that. I mean, that they're very aware.
That's their legacy
of where guys are. I mean, how about Guentzel? 3 years, 40 goals.
Yeah.
And he isn't flashy. I think that's the part that's hard for people to.
17 power play goals.
That's a lot.
Leading the NHL.
Yeah.
I mean, playing alongside Kucherov helps, right? But still.
But you got to finish, though.
Yeah.
You still have to finish, and you still have to put yourself in a position to be successful. And he's done it with more than one team and more than one elite player, where you start looking at it and saying, okay, I think it's some of this, and a lot of it is what Guentzel is doing too. You know, Anthony says 7 straight goals against were just backdoor tap-ins. Weak side D should be glued in front of the net. It's ridiculous. Very sad news about Bjorkstrand. Hopefully it's a couple of weeks. A lot of line variations, adjustments during the series will be huge.
7 straight goals?
Maybe he was counting that were backdoor tap-ins. So not necessarily 7 straight goals, before the Lightning scored, but maybe 7 straight that were scored on the Lightning happened to be tap-ins.
I don't remember 7 in a row. I mean, look, they had a couple last night in the first period. Those 2 at the end of the first period, but I'm thinking back to like Marco Kasper scored on a 2-on-1. That wasn't a backdoor tap in.
Yeah.
I mean, both of Kasper's goals were off the rush. Kasper walked in a little closer to the net on the overtime winner, but the Tyler Mott goal was just a weird. I mean, I don't know what 7 where he's starting the 7, but the Tyler Mott goal was just a weird goal, right? And I mean, the Kane goal wasn't a backdoor tap in. So I'm not quite sure where he's going with that. I will kind of revert to what we have said about the Lightning as a whole.
Yeah.
You don't become a top 5 defensive team in the NHL if you are soft around your net. Have there been moments when the Lightning have lost coverage in front of their own net? Of course, every team does. But it has not been a major problem this year. It has not been like a systemic problem where you're like, oh my gosh, they have to figure this out. Last year, I don't know if it was a systemic problem, but it was a problem. Too many scoring chances in front of the Lightning net. They allowed too many of those dangerous shots. They wanted to cut that down this year, and they've done it. That's one reason why their goals against has improved. One of many, but that was like last year you might say, okay, that's a problem area. I'm not sure like backside tap-ins. Like, I don't know that that's been really a soft underbelly of the Lightning's game this year. What Coop usually talks about turnovers and rush coverage. Now, I wouldn't say that, every goal they've given up has come from a turnover combined with or independent from a rush attack. They've given up other goals too, but those are the ones that he tends to mention.
Yeah, for sure. Anthony says, I'm not a fan of our 2-on-1 strategy. Vasi is great and all, but sometimes you need to force a play or at least slow down a guy. Letting everyone just skate in with no pressure from the blue line isn't the way. D need to pick their spots.
So again, Anthony, what are you talking about? The Marco Kasper goal in overtime turned into an men rush, but that goal happened because Yanni Gordon, JJ Moser had nothing left in the gas tank. Okay.
Is he talking about Tage Thompson coming straight down the middle?
But that wasn't a 2-on-1.
No.
Now the Detroit goal that Kasper scored to tie the game at 3 was a 2-on-1, but that was a pass across. That wasn't letting Vasi take the shoot. I think that's what he's saying. Like, just let Vasi take the shooter. I think he wants the defenseman to be a little bit more aggressive to go to the puck carrier, but that was a pass across. The defenseman's job was to take away the pass. When you're not attacking the puck carrier, you're supposed to take away the pass across. It was a really quick pass. It was a well-executed play. I think DeBrincat had an early pass to Kasper, and he put it. I mean, that's not an easy shot because he's not on his offside. He's a corner, short side. That was a really nice finish. I don't know. I mean, I've seen the Lightning break up 2-on-1s this year.
I feel like McDonough
stays put. Yeah, he does. The defenseman's job, I mean, Anthony, you know enough about hockey, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know here. Hedman sometimes will bull rush the puck carrier. He's got that long reach, though.
Yeah, he does.
Like, he's the sort of player that can do that. He doesn't do it all the time. Generally speaking, the defenseman is trying to take away the pass across on a 2-on-1. The goalie's job is to take the shooter. Now, like Horvat against the Lightning when the teams played on the island, scored. It was shorthanded, but it was a 3-on-1.
Right.
Now, that one, he's on his off wing, right side of the ice, lefty shot. He has a good angle, and he shot it in. But on a 3-on-1, what do you want the defenseman to do? Like, I mean, he kind of has to hold his ground.
Yeah.
So, again, I don't know. I think that's
Are we
trying to
nitpicking?
find a problem where there isn't one there. If you give up a 2-on-1, the other team might score.
I think
that's a huge opportunity. It's a big time opportunity for any team, the Lightning or any other team on a 2-on-1. If the pass gets across, usually it's an open net. Now in the Marco Kasper one, because he was a lefty on the left side of the ice, he couldn't one-time it. So Vasi did get over, but Kasper put it into a tiny hole at the top of the net. Vasi actually got a piece of that, I think, with the shaft of his stick, and it just deflected up. Tip your cap. It was a really well-executed play and a nice finish. The reason that goal happened, though, as I mentioned, the Lightning were trying to make a play in the neutral zone instead of just getting it in deep.
Right.
I would think in a playoff series, in a playoff game, a different decision would be made when you're up by 1 in the third period. But we're going to find out.
I think any team that gets a 2-on-1, you don't want to be playing. You're dealing with an issue there. I mean, you just are. It's just you don't want to be put in that spot. And I think a lot of teams can struggle, not just the Lightning in how they defend it. But nothing has alarmed me, maybe is what I should say, that I think that's a systemic problem for Tampa Bay. But, time will tell. This one came from John, and he wants to know about the Paul Gonsalves Geekie line. He said they look pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
They did.
They did look good.
Again, Gonsalves has really been the X factor to a degree because I think he's given them some of the issues that we had discussed earlier in the season about depth scoring. I think some people thought maybe he was going to be part of that. And then it took him a little bit.
He's playing with a lot of swagger right now. I mean, he shot that puck in, and not the one that he poked in against Alex Lyon, but the one that he shot in. That was a beautiful finish. He's been a facilitator. I mean, he said it with Geekie a couple of times on the Geekie goal where Geekie had like a shot and then another shot, and the third shot went in. And he's skating with authority, moving through the neutral zone with authority. He's winning puck battles.
I mean, this is encouraging.
Yeah.
And Nick Paul,
he's playing right now his best hockey at the most important time.
Yeah, at the highest level.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what we want. I think we need to have George Richards on tomorrow. What do you think? Have George. I think he's writing some stuff for NHL.com.
Give us an update on all these injuries.
Yeah, I kind of want to know.
The Panthers are not going to have, I doubt that they're going to have much of anything at the rink because they play tonight.
Who do we know?
7:30 start tomorrow, too.
It is.
ESPN picked up the game.
Who do we know is out for Florida? Ekblad.
Well, Bennett is out for the rest of the regular season. You told me that.
Yeah. And
Ekblad obviously is suspended. And Matthew Tkachuk, I don't think he's going to be playing before the playoffs. They've had other guys who are out now. Nico Sturm is back. Remember we had talked about him. He had the collision with Greer. I saw he played in a recent game. And Verhaeghe missed some time, but Verhaeghe played in the last game for Buffalo, or against Buffalo, I should say.
Do we want to get to this last question?
Yeah, sure.
Snuck in. Jimmy on YouTube says, I think switching Gord and Guentzel to start the playoffs is a great way of adding grit to the first line while maximizing the defensive responsibility of the second line. I like it.
Well, that's kind of what they did last night, except when he said switching Gord and Guentzel. Gordon was not playing with Hagel and Cirelli. Gord was playing on a line with Bjorkstrand and Paul. Yeah. Before Bjorkstrand got hurt, and Gonsalves was on that Hagel-Cirelli line. But yes, Gord up with Point and Kucherov, and they moved Guentzel into basically a checking, the checking line, we'll call it, even though they can produce offense, quite a bit of it, with Hagel and Cirelli. There's a rhyme and reason to why they did that. I don't know if we're going to see that through the final couple of games of the regular season, or we're going to see that in game 1 of the playoffs. And John Cooper mixes up his lines anyway. I would be shocked if in a playoff series we don't see at some point Guentzel with Point and Kucherov.
Right.
But maybe they don't start as a line.
It's a good question, Jimmy. We appreciate it. And we appreciate all the questions that came in today, as we had a lot to recap, a lot of news. And tomorrow, Lightning take on the Panthers. So that'll be fun. Anytime those two teams play, regardless, we'll get that involvement. And hopefully George or somebody from Florida can come on. Steve says Radish is day-to-day with a lower body injury. So
okay, day-to-day is good news. Yeah,
for sure. All right. Partner, I will catch you tomorrow. We'll do the show, and then we've got the game. Should be a lot of fun. Great work as always. Thanks to Steve Ersnick, Jared Johnston, and everybody for listening. We always appreciate you guys. I'm Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.